And we're live. Okay, time for class number 3. This is a very Chabad motivated class because the title of the class is "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" I'll start off with a story. This is a true story. So, starting in 1967, the Rebbe started this campaign of putting on tefillin. Every Jewish man should put on tefillin, and then he also had the campaign of lighting Shabbos candles. So starting from 1967, every Friday, Lubavitch boys and men go out and try to find Jews, walking around. I mean, here in Pembroke Pines, no, but, we're all from the Northeast, so there's a concept of walking, right? You don't drive from place to place. So Friday afternoons, yeshiva, school ends a little early, and then you go, you stop, they have a little stand, tefillin and Shabbos candles, excuse me, ma'am, are you Jewish? Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? Sometimes they have an RV motorhome. We call it a mitzvah tank. People come in and... So I was 14 years old. I was in California, 15 years old, and I was stupid kid. I didn't know. And all of a sudden, I'm stopping everybody. So I stopped this Asian guy, right? So I ask him, "Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish?" He says to me, "A yellow man, Jewish? Come on, you should know better than that." So it's like, and my guy who was next to me, because you always go with someone older than you, is like, "You're an idiot." I don't know. I was taught to ask everybody, right? So many times what happens is, people ask, let me get the, all right. So people ask on the corner, are you Jewish? I'll put up the Parsha overview. Are you Jewish? And they say, yeah, you want to put in tefillin? And you start saying, come on, do me a favor. You bribe them with something. I'll give you kugel. I'll give you chal. I mean, how do you think we do it over here, right? A little Judaism. We stack. Like the supermarkets, they put the eggs and the milk in the back and the candy in the front. Right, so we put the good food at the end, and we put all the prayer stuff in the front. Because this way, we know why. You know what JFK Jews are, right? You ever heard that? JFK Jews? Just for Kiddush, right?
Oh, are you accusing me of something?
No, God forbid. I remember when I was in Sydney, so there was a synagogue there of Russian immigrants. And so usually people will come for the Kiddush, let's say services end at 12, people will come at 11:30, sit around. These people would come and they would wait outside the synagogue for services to end. And as soon as services ended, they would come and sit down by the Kiddush. These Russian immigrants, they didn't care about anything. They weren't embarrassed. They just came. They weren't afraid to say they came for the food. So let's say you stop someone and you say, come to shul. Oh, they have very good chalent there, or you give them some ulterior motive. So the question is that mitzvah worth anything? I mean, so that's what if you guilt someone into doing a mitzvah. Is that mitzvah? Because many times, if you put on tefillin, I'll go to heaven. Brownie points. Sometimes the guy says, "Oh, Rabbi, we need to put on tefillin, have a big business meeting." Is that worth anything? So let's learn from Avram. Okay, this whole week we learn about Avram. The beginning of the week, you see the lesson overview is where is it? Page. I don't know which page it is. It's there. It's basically in the beginning of Avram is, thank you, 56. So in the beginning of Avram is recuperating from his operation, and three guests appear, and they're really angels, but they appear as men, and Avram serves them, and one of them heals Avram. Actually, Avram was in the middle of speaking to God when these angels appear. Hey, Michael J, you're on camera. And you're late again.
And I'm late, and I forgot my book.
Oh no, I have an extra one in my office. Where? I'm not sure, but on one of the shelves over there. I have a book. So afterwards, so they heal Avram. They tell Avram and Sarah that they're going to have a child in a year, and then another one is going to destroy Sodom. And then we have Avram and the whole debate with God. Are you going to destroy the wicked with the all the way around? You're going to destroy the righteous with the wicked, and then we have destruction of Sodom, and we have the story of Lot and his daughters, And then at the end of the parsha, Sarah has the child, Yitzchak. Okay, but in the middle of the parsha, text 1a, you see here. The question is: there value done without proper attention? Okay, so text 1a, we see in the Torah tells us, page 58, that Avram planted an Eshel. You'll see the word Eshel is not translated on purpose in Beersheba. You know, in biblical Israel, Beersheba is the southern border. So today, modern day Israel, Eilat, that's not part of biblical Israel. So biblical Israel goes more north than what Israel is today, and not as far south. So Beersheba was like the southern border. He planted if anyone knows anything about Israel, Beersheba is like right in the middle of the desert. If you go from Jerusalem, you ever been to Beersheba? Mm-hmm. If you go from Jerusalem south, basically you go through desert, come to Beersheba, then you go through more desert, and you go to Eilat. So he planted an Eshel in Beersheba, and he called in the name of God. Now, what is Eshel? So of course, there's an argument how to translate the word Eshel, or what does Torah refer to as Eshel? In text 1b, so Rabbi Yehuda says an Eshel is an orchard, basically anything you wanted. Avram had dates, grapes, and pomegranates. Rabbi Nehemiah says Eshel is an inn. Ask for anything you want: bread, meat, and wine. In fact, the Rashi on the commentary in the Gemara, which talks about in the Gemara about the story, so if you look at the word Eshel, if you look on the screen, Eshel, which is spelled Aleph Shin Lamed. So if you take the first letters of the words you see on the screen, Achila Shtia Levia, that he offered the guests Achila, which is food, Aleph, Shtia, which is drink, which starts with a shin, and Lamed, accompaniment and a place to stay. So we know, we have a tradition that Avram's tent was open on all four sides, and Avram personified welcoming guests and hosting people and feeding people. So great was Avram's attribute of hospitality, as I was saying before in the beginning of this week's parsha. Avram is in a lot of pain. It says, I forgot where it brings it down, that the third day, I think the Talmud says this, the third day after the bris is the most painful. And so Avram, it was the third day after his bris, right? Last week's parsha, Avram has the bris at 99 years old. The parsha ends. This week's parsha, Avram is recuperating, and God comes to visit him. And God makes it a very, very hot day because he doesn't want Avram to be bothered. But Avram is pained by the fact that he has no visitors, because this was his business, so to speak. And he sees, so Hashem sends these three angels, and in the middle of talking to God, just tells you how great, who comes first, God or people?
People.
So most people answer God, but you've been coming to Chabad for too long, right? It's interesting. It's other religions, they teach God comes before people, right? So it's okay. It's okay to hurt people in the name of God, but we see over here, actually two references in this parsha that you can't hurt people, or you have to take care of people before taking care of God. Avram is in the middle of talking to God. All of a sudden, these three people show up, and Avram tells God, "Please wait on hold. Your call is very important to us." He's the only person in history to put God on hold. And so we see how great the mitzvah of welcoming guests is. We see in text number 2, you see over here that and this is after Avram put God on hold. He goes to them and he says, "Please, you're already walking by. Why don't you stop in and refresh yourself, and I'll give you some food." And he went and told Sarah, please make 3 loaves of bread. Actually, it was matzah. It was Pesach. And he told Yishmael, his son, please bring 3 animals, because he didn't want to just serve the meat. Sorry, Michael J. He wanted to serve them, good pieces of meat. And he serves them tongue, and he gives them first milk until the meat's ready, and then dairy. Actually, by the way, one of the big halachic discussions over here.
So they had dairy and meat in the same meal?
So first dairy, then meat. Actually, some people say it looks like Avram served meat and dairy together. So we don't want to get sidetracked. But it's not the point of the class. No, but there is a big discussion. How Avram do? Anyway, so we see over here that Avram is very big into hospitality. That's his thing. Now, we know Avram's whole concept. It wasn't just because he was in the hospitality business. I was actually speaking to someone who works for Hilton Hotels today. When we have someone who works for Norwegian Cruise Lines, right? We're in the hospitality industry here. Well, this is Florida. This is a hospitality state, right?
Based on a lot of the service I get at restaurants.
Because you're a local, that's right. So Avram, this whole reason, why did Avram have his tent open for all four sides? Why did Avram take his time to host people? So you look back to text number 1, it says he planted an eshel, and we've been focusing on the eshel, the orchard. But why? In order to vayikra b'shem Hashem, in order to call in the name of God. What does that mean? Look at text number 3a. The Gemara in Saita says that don't read the word vayikra, because remember the Torah doesn't have vowels. Instead, read it with different vowels. Vayakri. He called others to call the name of God. What does that mean? How did he do that? So you see, after they had their fill, after they ate, so and they would start thanking Avram. So Avram says, "You're thanking me. What you think? You think it's my food you ate? No, you ate God. You ate God foods, right?" So Avram established the first Chabad house ever in history. Avram knew the fastest way to a person's heart is through their stomach. Right? I mean, if you give, by the way, just on a side note, the Rebbe spoke about, some people, not so much anymore, because people caught on to Chabad's idea. That some people mock the idea that the Chabad houses were feeding people and sort of enticing Jews to come with material incentives. So it's not worth it. The Rebbe said, even if, let's say, their spiritual service is no good, which is not, but let's say it is, taking care of another person's material needs, that's also a mitzvah. You can help a person just to help a person. So if you give a person a meal, that's a mitzvah too. So, but Avram had the first Chabad house. People come in, he had whiskey, right? And he had, I don't know, probably.
Yeah, some challah.
You think he had whiskey in the Middle East? What do they drink over there?
Fermented lamb's milk.
How do they get drunk?
Beer.
Out of it? What?
Beer.
Beer? They get beer?
The Egyptians paid their laborers with beer and
All right.
other things. Beer and
So the idea is that Avram understood that the best way to get to somebody is through food. So he would give them a good meal, and then they would thank him, and say, no, it's Hashem. Now, not everybody wanted to thank Avram's invisible God. And said, listen, do me a favor, you serve your God, I'll serve my God very much. Now, what did Avram do when a guy didn't want to speak about God?
Here's your bill.
So Avram had a method. Look at text number 3b. Text 3b. The Medrash says, if a traveler would agree to thank God, fine, it was free. If they wouldn't agree, Avram would say, "Pay me what you owe." And the guy said, "Okay, what do I owe?" So if you ever go to the airport, right, and you want to buy a sandwich or a bag of chips, all of a sudden, it's like you're in like the middle of Ukraine. It's very limited supply over there. Potato chips are very rare in the airport. It's like $5 for a bottle of water, right? $20. Like last year. I went with my son. I took Sarah and Mendy to a football game. So they said, I picked them up straight from school. I figured I'll buy them something. So I go there. Okay, Mendy, what do you want? I think he got a pastrami sandwich. I think it was like $25 for some terrible pastrami sandwich on rye. You know what I'm saying? All right, so Mendy, next time we bring snacks. Yeah, right? So Avram would tell them, says, "Oh yeah, where are you gonna get wine in the airport? Where are you gonna get wine in the desert? Where are you gonna get bread in the desert? Remember, this is Beersheba. It's a desert. Where are you gonna get?" And when they would get the bill, and there were no dishes to wash, they would say, "All right, let's talk about your God thing." All right. So two questions come up right away. Number one, that doesn't seem honest. You want to serve people, you want to help them, fine, but don't help them in order to get something out in return. That's not help. Helping means that you help them. right? We're also talking about a person of great spiritual stature. This is one of the patriarchs. This is like the founding member. It's Abraham and Sons, right? He's the name of the company. Not only the name of our company, he has Islam his company and Christianity is his company. I mean, he has a very big company. And you would even the Muslims respect Abraham, right? Ibrahim is a Muslim name, so you would think Abraham would be a person more straightforward. Why didn't he come tell people, listen here, one condition: you want my food, you got to thank God. If not, find yourself another establishment. It's a bait and switch, right? Isn't that what it is? Question number one. Question number two. Whoops. Which question? Oh, okay. Question number two didn't make it to the slideshow. Question number two is: were these people really thanking God? These people just didn't want to pay the bill. So they were mumbling some words. All right, thank God. Knock. Could I leave now? It's like when two kids are fighting. Say I'm sorry. Sorry. No, say I'm sorry. Okay, you got. I'm sorry. What is that? Sorry doesn't. So what's the idea? Okay, so let's first deal with the material part. The bait and switch, the deceitfulness, and then we'll deal with the spiritual. Okay. Any questions so far? Are we all good? We're good? Okay. So if you look at the story in the Medrash, if you look carefully, you'll see that Avram didn't approach them. They walked into Avram's house. If you see, so they walked in, they started eating. You see text 4a, page 63. It says, Avram would welcome them. They would walk in. And once they ate and drank, and he would tell them to say a blessing, they would ask, what should we say? And he would say, bless God. And if not. Now, continuing 4b, this is Rabbi Shmuel Yaffe Ashkenazi, and he says something very interesting. Says, it's who walks into a hotel thinking the food's going to be free? They came to Avram's establishment. Why? Because obviously Avram had a very good name of serving people. His food was very good. It was very plentiful. So you walk into a restaurant, and you have to pay? Yeah. What do you think? No, there's a reason why there's a saying. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So when they walked in, they thought they were going to pay money. So now, if the host decides to comp them, right? You go to Vegas, you go there thinking you have to pay. They decide to pay to comp you. I'm a big ruler, right? That's up to the host. You can't go there with an assumption that's gonna be free. You have to ask up front. All this food. What I'm gonna have to do? You see in text 4c. This is actually. We'll see that he continues and says it's actually a logical conclusion. Avram went to them and said, look, this. It's not a bait and switch. It says, you don't want to thank God. Why don't you want to thank God? Because you're in the desert. Right? Tell me. Bread, where does bread come in the desert? It's not natural. Where does meat come in the desert? Where does wine come in the desert? It's not natural. So now, anything that comes from God is free, right? Fruit, vegetables are free. Right? When someone plants the apples, you're not paying him for the apple. He didn't create the apple. What you're paying him for is the labor. What God makes is free. Side story of when the previous Rebbe was in jail, and it was very bad. They wanted to torture him and kill him, but they told him to walk down this hallway. It was black. It was scary. We said, I don't think it's a good idea. So it was a different hallway. It was more light. So we decided he's going to wait there just to figure out what he's doing. Anyways, there was a bench outside some offices, and he's sitting there. I think he was having a cigarette. This is 1929, 1927, sorry. So a guy walks in, see this rabbi dressed in a long black coat, a hat, a beard. He says, what are you doing here? He says, I'm resting. He says, I know, but what's your name? So he said, my name is Rabbi Yossi Yitzchak Lubavitch. Oh, Lubavitch. I know Lubavitch. The Rebbe asks him, how do you know Lubavitch? He says that he came from a town right next to Lubavitch. Lubavitch is a hole in the wall in Russia. And one time the well in their town dried up. And the other towns didn't want to share water. A lot of people didn't want to share water. But the Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Rashab, Shalom Deber, said water comes from God. You know, we don't stop and charge for things that God makes. Don't worry about it. He said Lubavitch is good water. So he said, where did they tell you to walk? He said, that way. Don't walk that way. Stay. And that actually saved his life. But the point is, what God makes is free. Avram says, you don't believe in God? No problem. So then you believe in man-made labor. Okay, then pay me. If God did it, then it's free. I can't charge you for it. God created the animal. Avram was saying, you know, if you thank God, then I'll bypass, you know, I'll overlook my. But if you don't believe in God at all, then obviously, how did the meat get here? He wasn't conning them. He said, let's play your way. See, make sense?
Also,
Yeah.
Abraham had a reputation, and people came to his establishment.
Yeah.
They would know what had to be done.
Right.
Because they would have heard that too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You get a great free meal. All you have to do is a little blessing at the end.
Yeah. You know, it seems. The truth is, it seems minimal. But if you're a fervent religious believer and someone tells you, we also have to take into context that Avram was the only person who believed in one God and an invisible God. We said this before, but it's hard for us to understand that the entire society, entire world society, believed in multiple gods, and God had to be manifest in some kind of material. You know, they had idols, and they bowed down to the sun and the moon, and God of plenty, God of health, God of good children, whatever it is. I mean, it was so. Avram was saying this, and also people back then were a lot more superstitious than they are now. You know, these days, you know, we laugh at the whole mirror thing and the black cat thing, and you know, and the broken mirror, and I said mirror, the ladder. Is there something? I'm sure there's other ones, you know.
Lighting 3 things on a match.
Yeah, but that had a good.
Never heard that before.
Me neither did I.
Three cigarettes on a
Ah?
match is because
The eclipse, yeah, exactly.
The sniper can shoot the guy.
I saw that, by the way.
We talked that.
What?
That came in War.
The last eclipse.
This
No,
morning.
World War
Oh, was
One.
this morning? Wasn't it like early in the morning?
You
Yeah. I
had
mean,
3 cigarettes. The third guy.
I was actually up
got it.
at 5:30.
Oh, the guy holding
I
the man
forgot about it.
actually got it.
Anyway, so I mean, but if you look at, I mean, not even going back so far, you go back a few hundred years, the world was a very, very superstitious place. So people, you know, Avram would say, bless God, and people would think, oh no, the other God's going to smite me. I mean, if you look at Greek mythology, one God is getting into a fight with the other God and floods the world, and because of this, I mean, it's almost like, and you look at it and you read it, and like, these people are idiots. Who could believe in such a thing? It wasn't just okay. Just say a stupid sentence, and what do you care? People obviously were hesitant. Some people, most people not. So now that we got that halachic thing out of the way, that Avram didn't mislead, people came on their own volition, and he followed their logical direction to why they should thank God. Now let's go to the spiritual part of it. Is a coerced mitzvah worth anything? If I force a person to do a mitzvah, if I convince them, I guilt them into doing it, is it worth anything? So first of all, we have to know that Avram, remember we spoke about last week, that Avram first discovered God when he was 3, but he started speaking to God about God when he was 40. What was he doing for those 37 years? He was perfecting his argument. Remember, when you're the one guy, you have to have a lot of responses to people who are going to come to all these different reasons why you are wrong and they're right. Right? So if you look at text 5, the Gemara says, we said this already. All right. The text 5, the Gemara says, sorry, oops, went too far. That Avram had 400 chapters, had 400 different answers for people to debate. Actually, this is election day. It'd be ready. Yeah. Avram came ready with answers. He didn't just say, "Listen, I believe what I believe, and because I have the money, I have the power. You got to do it my way." Avram looked for a debate. He was trying to convince people that there's only one God, and you have to abandon all this multiple God business. And you see that the previous Rebbe, the one I spoke about earlier, being in jail, text number 6, it says like this. He said that how would Avram do it? Avram would go through logic. These people, they believe in all these different kind of gods, right? But they were adults and they were thinking people. So he came to them, and he was a masterful teacher, and he used examples. And if you're a teacher, and you could just talk and talk and talk and talk, and if you have good students that listen, but that's great. But when you're trying to convince somebody, you have to give examples and stories and different things on the person's level that they're going to understand. So you see in text number 6, so he says that he would bring examples and parables that were well received, and he was able to distill and teach them these complex teachings, and they are complex because he's talking about an invisible God that's omnipresent, that's omnipotent, that's indescribable, has no bodily form. If you think about it, God is not understandable, incomprehensible. So we're trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. So how do you do that? You gotta use different formats, different examples. Now, the people that couldn't understand, Avram was speaking about something above them. So even though they didn't understand, they sensed the truth in what he was saying, because he spoke with such passion and love for God that they felt that, although maybe I don't 100% understand, but from the way he's giving it over, I feel it's true. So sometimes if you give over, there's a concept in the Gemara that says, things that come from the heart enter the heart, even if you don't necessarily have the right words. I think I've told this story, and I think I've told this story before. It was in Poland in the 20s, I think. They wanted to outlaw ritual slaughter, shechita. So, you remember the story? And so they send a delegation to the king, governor, I don't know what it's called. Maybe it's before the 20s. It was somewhere late 1800s, early 1900s. And so the Jews only spoke Yiddish, and then the Polish governor, king, obviously didn't. So they hired an interpreter, but the main interpreter didn't show up, and a different guy didn't speak Yiddish well. They came back and told the rabbi. It was an absolute disaster. They couldn't communicate. So the rabbi said to them, "Did you faint?" "What do you mean? Did you faint?" I said, "What do you mean? Why should I faint? Why should you faint? Because hundreds of thousands of Jewish families are not going to have now meat for Shabbos and Yom Tov. I mean, that should matter to you. If you would have fainted, the guy would have realized how important it is." So sometimes, just by seeing how passionate a person is, we get it. We get the truth, even if we can't understand it. Now, that's a regular person. Now, what happens to one who didn't want to hear? So, no, I don't want to. I don't want to thank God. So how do you get through to those people? So the Rebbe says like this. Avram wasn't dictating to them and telling them, "You have to believe what I have to believe." Avram was trying, because how did Avram discover God? Through belief or through logic? Through logic. He wasn't asking people to take a leap of faith, something that's totally irrational. Avram was asking people to follow me on this path of logic, and they'll come to the same conclusion I did. So if I'm trying to have a conversation with you, right, and we're trading ideas, and you're being irrational, then we can't have a conversation. A debate, this is probably one of the problems with modern day society, especially when it comes to politics. It's my way or the highway. Basically, if you don't agree with me, if you don't have the same letter that I have, you're automatically wrong. Why? I don't know. But if you disagree with me, you're wrong. That's not a debate. So Avram was trying to get through to these people. So what did he have to do? Let's look what the Rebbe says in text number 7. The Rebbe says like this. When he saw that some people did not take any of his explanations, and he knew his explanations worked because he used them on all these different people, and he was trying to get into a debate, right? Why don't you want to talk about it? So they were encased in an unusually resistant coarseness to all things holy. They were so stuck. They were so selfish and self-centered. Nothing's wrong with having an opinion, but you're so self-centered that you can't listen to someone else's opinion. I mean, how much of society would be healed if we had the ability to listen to another person, even if you disagree? Right? One of the geniuses of the American government is that there's a balance of power. There shouldn't be one party ruling everything. There should be, give and take. It shouldn't be one person's opinion, and that's it. It's healthy when you could talk to someone else. So now, if someone says no, I don't want to talk about it because I know I'm right. So what do you got to do? You got to break through that self-centered core. So now, like in the military, what do they do when a person joins the military? First they do is they break the person down. They totally rip them apart mentally, and then they build the person back. So similar thing over here. Step one, a person was very obstinate and obnoxious, right? Because he was so into himself. So what are you gonna do? I'm gonna break him a little bit. So I'll put some financial pressure on him, right? The guy didn't want to be penniless and walk out with a tremendous credit card bill. So you know something? Let me hear your argument one more time. So it's not that the thanking God was disingenuous. What Avram did was he broke down the barrier for them to have a conversation. And once he's able to have an open conversation, then they thought, Avram's onto something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I thought so too. So what Avram did was he weakened their resistance and to God, which caused them to accept his previous argument. So there's on Chabad on campus. Just give you an example. They have these programs. If the students attend a certain amount of classes, they'll get a stipend of money. Or I know in Argentina, for example, they still do it. They bring them to New York, or they bring them to Florida. So you're saying, the learning has no value? Of course, the learning has value. The incentive is to get them through the door. Once they're learning, that learning is good. Now, the interesting thing is that up until the Rebbe said this is in the 60s or 70s, everyone looked at Avram as like a con artist, like he was forcing them. But Avram, the Rebbe, and showed us the way Avram looked at people, because that's the way the Rebbe looked at people. The Rebbe looked at every person as potential to do good. Every person, Jew and Gentile alike. People came in front of him, and the Rebbe looked at them as, how can this person contribute to a better society? There was a video, I don't know if you remember, in 1991, there were riots in New York, in the section of Brooklyn that I grew up, Crown riots. So some black guys came to speak to the Rebbe, and the guy was saying that he wants peace and everything else. So the Rebbe was saying, listen, we understand persecution, and you people, you understand persecution based on your history. The Rebbe looked at it's after them when it's us. The Rebbe looked at everyone as a tool to realize a greater goal. And you see Jonathan Sachs, who just passed away a couple of years ago, who said, you see text number 8, he said, most people look at people and see what they see. Great people look at others and see what they are. The Rebbe, the greatest of the great, looks at people and see what they become. So this is Avram. Avram had the ability to look at a person to see what they could contribute. And every person. So making the world, as the Midrash says, a dwelling place for God, this is not only a Jewish thing. This is a world, humanity thing. And the Jewish people are supposed to teach people, will be the light unto the nations. But this is the job for everybody. We learn that from Avram. So, any questions? Good? Keep going. Okay. I think this one's going to be a short class today. just in case we end early, I have a couple stories.
And a shot.
Okay. Yeah, but that's off camera.
You're allowed to end as early as you want,
Okay.
but not as late as you want.
Oh, okay. So Avram's strategy was like this. Where are we? Opa. So Avram's strategy was, first we have to get them to think about the limited nature of a person's own existence, of the person's own intellect, and then we can expand their knowledge, right? First, in order to learn, you have to realize your limitation. In order to learn, you have to realize that you don't know, that you're lacking knowledge. If you think you have everything, then you'll never learn. You were a teacher, the most obnoxious students, they know everything.
Oh, I taught elementary schools.
Right.
They all thought they knew everything.
I have a niece, I have a niece and nephew. You would tell them something, and they would come ask you a question, and you would tell them the answer, and they would impulsively say, "Yeah, I know." Like, what do you know? You did.
The correct response is, now I know.
Right, but they were just so used to saying, "I know." So they didn't even realize they were saying it. So this is what the Rebbe says. This is the strategy of Avram. So you might suggest, by way of illusion, Avram's words put them in a financial bind, and this forced them to consider their inner vice. I mean, they realized their limitation, and they realized their coarseness and their resistance to the ability to expand to something greater than themselves. Now, once you realize your own limitation, and once you realize where you stand, everybody wants to go up. But the biggest problem people can have is complacency. Because complacency means you never grow. But if you put into a position where you realize what you've yet to accomplish, you say, what was that story? I think I told the story. This guy, he felt he was all successful, and he bought himself a BMW, I think 3 Series, and he felt good about himself. And then the next guy came into the dealership and bought a 7 Series, and he felt like a failure because, so, which is good. We always want to push ourselves, not in BMWs necessarily, the German car, but so what now? Once Avram said, "Listen here, I understand you have a difference of opinion. That's okay. But can you understand that there's another opinion? There's another way of looking at it. That you don't know everything. Once you get the person to sit down, now we can have the argument. Now, what's the argument? Argument is first cause. Because remember, Avram was trying to teach everybody that God created and controls the world. We're not to us that's, well, duh, but to them this was a revolutionary concept. So he said, all right, everything has a cause, right? Everything has a cause. Who caused the cause? I mean, when you go back to the beginning. Something has to cause the cause, right? And something has to be there to put it all. This is a logical argument. Put whatever word you want to it, right? Whatever title you want, but there has to be something that. Now, for example, he said, let's use the desert, right? You came to the desert. You had food. What caused it to be here? Didn't come. Bread didn't grow from the ground of the desert. Nothing grows in the desert. You came and you ate. Who caused it to be here? He wasn't coursing them and fighting with them. He was having a logical debate. You ate meat, drank wine. How did it get here? My wife always jokes. She probably won't watch this class. She has to be talking too much. But sometimes she'll clean the kitchen. I'll come home. I said, "You see, a magician came, and so there was a guy actually did on YouTube. I think it was an Australian guy. So there was his girlfriend or wife, I forgot, was complaining the place is a mess. And he's like, no, don't worry. Leave it here on this coffee table. I'm telling you, every time I leave something on the coffee table, it's like, come back the next day and it's gone. And it's magic. It's like, what are you, an idiot? No, I'm serious. If I find a leak. I mean, obviously, the house doesn't clean itself. And you remember on Shabbat, I told the story of the chassid with the ink truck and the paper truck. Oh, you came too late. This chassid was arguing with his atheist.
I was just gonna say, a little shot there.
Cry. So the chassid was arguing with his atheist about, first cause or not. So the chassid brought a newspaper. He said, never believe what happened. An ink truck and a paper truck, they smashed into each other, and voila, the New York Times. Maybe that's why they get so much stuff wrong. I'm kidding. So his whole argument, you see, the text number 10. So I said Avram was creating an environment where the people would see it from Avram's vantage point. He wasn't fighting with them. He was telling them, you believe everything happened on its own? Okay. So the bread, the wine, the meat, whatever you ate, just happened on its own? Obviously not. So text number 10, this is what he writes. So he located in the barren desert, a place with no grapes, dates, and pomegranates. And Hashem was, I'll put the English. Hashem was there for him, and in a place that didn't support human habitation, and provided for him. And then he said, he would say to them, if you accept the proposition and bless God, fine, no problem. If not, so how can you believe that there's no cause when you yourself just benefited from something that ended up having a cause? And afterward, they would say, something? You're right. Only a pig-headed idiot would refuse. Somebody who doesn't want to have an argument. You forget it. It's nothing to talk about, right? Like I know this has nothing to do one with the other. But like anti-Semitism or bigotry, racism, it's not based on logic. It's based on hate. Someone who hates Jews, someone who hates black people. You're gonna go and tell them that black people are not bad people. Jewish people don't control the banks. I mean, these people, they have to experience, that a Jew is a nice guy. You can talk to them blue in the face. You're not going to win. But if somebody wants to have a logical debate, then Avram was very good at it. Okay. So there's good news and very good news. The good news is Avram was very successful. The very good news is that was before Sinai, when no one had a godly soul except for Avram, and everybody was pagans and everything else. Now, the very good news is that no matter what kind of Jew you call yourself, every Jew is embedded with a Jewish tracking device. Like, what was that? Who was it going to?
Yes.
Who was going to implant? What was that thing? That was with the virus. Wasn't they believe it was Bill Gates? Right, Bill Gates was going to put in a tracking device, right?
Tracker into the shot.
Yeah.
Guys, you're already carrying a tracker in your phone. You don't need a shot.
Right. So God, when He created you as a Jew, He created every Jew with an embedded godly spark, and that means that automatically we have on number one, we have this Jewishness, this Judaism inside of us, that we don't have to sort of introduce to ourselves like these pagans had to. We automatically have it. So you go to a Jew and say, do a mitzvah, and the Jew says, why should I do a mitzvah? I'm not religious. No, you're fighting with me, but that's the biggest mistake that Chassidus is trying to correct. That the Torah and Judaism is not something outside of us that we're trying to implant and bring inside. It's actually really embedded inside of us, and we're only trying to do is bring it out. See, look at text number 11. The Rebbe says like this: no matter the circumstances of a Jew, he or she has a godly soul. Therefore, even while committing a sin, a Jew remains a Jew. And even while committing a sin, he still wants to do God's bidding. It follows that only the Jew's outer crust requires piercing. You only have to get through the outer level. The internal core is intact even before the outer crust is pierced. And when we apply pressure to pierce the external coarseness, our purpose is to reveal the intrinsic holiness that is already present. So, I'll tell you a story. It's been too long, no stories. So the story is told by a gentleman who lives now in Florida. His name is Chaim. And so when it came Hanukkah, the Rebbe pushed everybody to go and make sure everyone has a menorah and candles. So in Brooklyn, there was a lot of Russian immigrants. And they came from Russia, very rough around the edges. They experienced Soviet communism. So there was a guy sitting there on New York. I don't know if you're familiar with New York. Some of the bigger streets has these chessboards. You can concrete benches and chessboards. So he's just sitting there, and Chaim goes over to this guy, and he says, he says in Yiddish. Russians all speak Yiddish. He says, K'yamtiv. Says, do you have a menorah? He says, thank you very much, but I'm not interested. He says, no, but it's Hanukkah tonight. I think it was his first or second night of Hanukkah. It's Hanukkah tonight. Maybe I could interest you in the menorah. No, thank you. I'm not interested. Chabad. We're not good at taking no for an answer.
That's for sure.
Right. So wait. It's not a false Rebbe. I told us. It's based on here that even if a Jew says no, he really means yes. So they tell you in mitzvahs and in fundraising, they tell you there's a yes and there's a no that's not yet a yes, right? So the guy says, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. Please, leave me alone. So the guy said, listen here. He tells him, Chaim tells him, listen, tonight's Hanukkah. I don't know if you have a menorah. If not, here's a menorah and here's candles. If you want to light it, light it. If you don't want to light it, it's up to you. So he goes and he's going around asking all the people, and just happened to be he came by this, the same way, and this gentleman sitting on the bench, and I think it was 2 candles, and he's sitting there looking at the candles, crying. Chaim said, I don't know the guy's name. I have no idea what happened to him, but this kind of encapsulates, what happens. A Jew, even though he's distant, and a lot of these Russian Jews didn't merit to have a strong Jewish education. They knew absolutely nothing. Remember that the Ukrainian family that came here?
Mm-hmm.
These kids knew. When I spoke to them, coming for Rosh Hashanah, shofar, what shofar? Oh, the mother says, is that the thing where? Which Jew doesn't know shofar and Rosh Hashanah, right? So every Jew has that Judaism inside. Sometimes we just gotta get through the rough exterior. So, going back to the question in the beginning. So the question was, is a coursed mitzvah worth anything? The answer is yes. The whole premise of the question is wrong. There's no such thing as a coursed mitzvah, because in reality, a Jew wants to do the mitzvah. So when you guilt or motivate a person, what you're doing is you're just getting past that crust or the outer desire. So what do you got to do? You got to cajole. You got to push a person a little bit in the direction. I'll tell you, for example, my son Mendy.
I know him.
He loves playing video games, and officially he hates reading, but he doesn't hate reading, because when we tell him no, you can't play video games, you have to read, he gets into a book and he gets totally lost. So in his mind, he hates reading, but he actually loves reading. He just thinks, he just likes playing video games, maybe more. So when we push him to read, he sits there and he reads a lot. Same thing. Every Jew, not the same thing, even more. Every Jew wants to do the mitzvah. You just gotta, just move them along. So this isn't just the job for the Chabad rabbi and the Chabad rebbitzin. This is the job for every Jew. Every person created in the image of God wants to do the right thing, and every Jew wants to do the godly thing. It's our job to, number one, to be a model of good behavior, and to help people. So you gotta know. Don't be phased. It's not personal. It's business. Look at text number 12. The Rebbe says this is a long text. The Rebbe says the lesson from Avram's story is obvious. It's very long. The actions of our patriarchs point the way for their descendants. Similarly, we have to act the way Avram did and publicize God's presence throughout the world. Now, someone should ask, what did I accomplish by this effort? After all, the Jew we convinced to recite a blessing, to say the Shema, or to daven, or did it unwillingly without heart, without kavanah. The one who put on tefillin did so to be free of pressure. So, these Jews are running down the street after me. I'll just put it on, that's it. Whether they will do the mitzvah again tomorrow, we don't know. So what's the point? The guy before ate not kosher, ate after, what's the point? We respond by saying the story in the Torah, which serves as a lesson. If in the days of Avram, when he dealt with pagans before the Torah was given, that this approach achieved the end goal of that we said earlier, that Avram caused the people to call out the name of God. When we deal with Jews who already have a head start because they have Jewishness and God embedded in them, it's a lot easier. Moreover, it is likely that the gentle pressure that brought up the one mitzvah will inspire them to do another mitzvah, to the point that they will openly want to do mitzvahs. The efforts to publicize the name of God in the world in a manner that makes God known to all creation will hasten the time when the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God, as it says in Isaiah, and this will be achieved. It says, "Well, the king will rise from the house of David and teach all humanity." So, I'll end up with a story. The story was written up by a woman in Baltimore, and her name is Laura Shulman. So she was in Baltimore. I think she was by John Hopkins University, the big hospital there, right? John Hopkins. I think that's the hospital. And here was Hanukkah. I think she was there for a conference or something. She was all alone, and it was Hanukkah. And there in front of John Hopkins University is a big menorah. She was kvelling because there was some Jewish pride. All of a sudden, a Jewish kid runs after, a little Chabad kid, hat, around his ears, and runs up to her and says, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" She said, "Yeah, I happen to be Jewish." "Do you know today's Hanukkah?" I said, "Of course." "Do you have a menorah?" So she says, "No." Says, "Can I get you one?" And she excitedly said, "Yes." Then she writes, says, the kid was more excited than I was. He goes and grabs a menorah, and she lit the menorah, and she said, all because of that Jewish pride of the big menorah and being asked, one thing led to the other, and she I think now she keeps kosher, she keeps Shabbos, just because of that gentle nudge. "Excuse me, are you Jewish? Can I give you a menorah? Like I gave you those pamphlets, for the 7 Noahide laws." You never know what can start the ball rolling. So now, draw 2 conclusions. We have the key points yet, but 2 conclusions. When you approach for someone to do a mitzvah, don't think, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not holding there." You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You do the mitzvah because you are actually identifying with your true identity. And then when you meet another person, you should utilize that opportunity to try to get them to do a mitzvah, to realize who they really are. All right, key points. That thing there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Avram offered free food to those willing to thank God. Those were unwilling. He charged exorbitant fees, and then they changed their mind. And we learned that they didn't change their mind because of the fee. They merely changed their ability to listen. And once they were able to listen, Avram had a very convincing argument. And that was before Sinai. After Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah, a Jewish core is holy, even when he's not acting in a Jewish way. And all we got to do is we got to penetrate that exterior pressure, gentle pressure, peaceful persuasion, financial incentives, good food. And then when the Jew does the mitzvah, he's authentic. That's who he is. And when someone pressures us to do a mitzvah, they're not disrespecting our wishes. On the contrary, they're expressing a confidence in who you really are. Like my father used to tell me in school, if your teacher didn't care about you, he wouldn't bother you. I'm still not buying it. All right. Thank you for joining. B'Ezras Hashem, next week's class is going to be on Monday, because Tuesday is the men's event.